Welcome back to episode 2, season 2 of You Don't Say. My name is Busiso Mzolo, aka Siso Styles, and I'm not alone, of course. I'm with the broski, the yellow bone, the light-skinned guy.
Colorism, brother. Colorism.
Taps
and taps. Go yellow, same time filter, aka Mr. Too Much Mklaga. Smart figure mina ya kanya. Se kanya na wakanya mbao. How am I? Boy, I'm loving this new season, you know. Bringing it on. Yeah, man, You Don't Say, a platform where we come on and have general conversations that affect us as Amajita from day to day. From Mama Autia Sekasi, Sotra, the burbs, you know, we relate to everyone. And on today's episode, we're gonna focus to something that's really been making rounds or buzz in the social climate, you know, which is mental health issues, and it often
leads to depression and suicide.
Isn't mental health issue depression? Okay,
that's why we're here.
Yeah, but this we read an article. I read an article recently that 450 men commit suicide on a monthly basis. That's very alarming, you know, and so we decided, no, let's bring someone in. Let's bring someone in for this episode to help us just break it down and give us a little bit of insight and observation on how real is depression amongst Amajita, you know. So today on the show, we are joined by a lecturer and a PhD candidate from UJ. She's a psychologist by profession, so she deals a lot with mental issues. So, did I say issues or issues?
You said issues.
English. We are joined by none other than Thandokazi Maseti.
Yeah.
Tando.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, we're good, man. Lovely to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Are you comfortable then?
I am.
You have your water and everything.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Just in case it gets here.
I'm all set, I'm ready.
Okay, let's get into it. You know, you saw that little moment between myself and Buddha. We couldn't connect. Depression, mental health. Can you tell us a little bit more? What's mental health issues? Okay. What does it mean? Depression, the whole works.
Sure. So mental health would encompass your psychological well-being, your emotional well-being. So when we speak about your psychological health, your emotional health, you would refer to mental health. But when you speak about depression, you're speaking about a mental disorder, right? Okay. So when you speak about mental health, you're not necessarily saying a person there's abnormality, okay, right? So we just want everyone to be well, right? It's just well-being. So it's like speaking about health in general, okay, before there is some disorder. And depression then would be a type of mental disorder. It's one of the very common disorders worldwide, and in South Africa we're picking that up as well. It's a mood disorder. So if you're speaking about mood disorders, you would make it you speak about depression and you'll speak about bipolar as you know as different things, but also quite similar, and we can talk about that.
When you say bipolar, I remember Kanye West's album.
Oh yeah.
What's bipolar?
Okay, so there's so mental disorders will be classified according to different clusters, right? Depending on what version of the DSM, which is almost like the Bible of psychology, or what we use to classify disorders, right? So when we, as way of differentiating between the different types, you'd speak about mood disorders, and within mood disorders you have major depressive disorder, what we call depression, and we also have bipolar. So a depressive episode would be when you are very sad, you feeling helpless, hopeless, you can't sleep, you can't eat, and you know, and just so it's like really sadness, sadness. And your bipolar would be having that manic episode, like having ecstasy, but also having sadness. So I could go from being very sad to being very happy, but to the point that it's not really abnormal, and in that I cannot function at work or at school or at home, right? And that's what really, it's quite difficult when you're dealing with mental disorders at a time where we also speak about emotional issues, you know. So I can wake up and say, oh, I'm feeling so depressed, as if, you know, it's just a thing, right? But when you speak about mental issues, you're speaking about a person who can't function, a person who cannot get themselves to get by their day. You're not able to you know, you don't have the energy to do anything if you are depressed. But with bipolar, it's like having that, but also having, like, going from that depressive state to a very manic, like to being very happy, to having this grandiosity that I can do everything, and I can maybe that's not even the right way to say it, but where I would think that I am the best clinician there ever was in the world, and so everyone deserves a part of my skills. So I'm gonna go from having having a small practice where I can only see 2 patients in 3 hours, going from that to saying, let's open it up to 20 people, right? Because you have this belief that I can reach out to all those people, right? Yeah. So it's like I can break these walls like now and build a practice, you know. So it's not just being excited over something, like it impairs your well-being. You can't function properly. You obviously, imagine if I had bipolar and I had to be at work, so that would not, you know, and it's not as popular, right? And maybe that's because there's not much research that's done on it, or people are just not aware.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. The real issue here. So the number that I just gave out now was reported in last year's Destiny Men. About 450 men commit suicide in South Africa on a monthly basis. Why is it so high amongst Amachita compared to women?
Okay.
Also, just to add on that figure, there's I think in London, UK somewhere, there was an awareness campaign that actually, I think 87 men every week commit suicide as well. So yeah, just to add on the facts and figures. Yeah. Okay.
So every person, so a person may have depression, but not necessarily be suicidal.
Okay.
But what we're finding, what research is suggesting, is that people who do commit suicide, whether successfully or not, are likely to be depressed, right? So we also need to be careful how we speak about suicide and depression, because if I come out and say I am dealing with depression, and I tell my employer that I'm struggling with depression, you don't want to be stigmatized. You know, you don't want people thinking, oh, is she gonna kill herself now, right? Because that just makes it worse, right? But what we're also finding is that people who do commit suicide, you know, a lot of times are depressed. Why is it? Why are we seeing a lot of men suffering from depression and also committing suicide? Specifically in South Africa, I think we have not really been talking about depression, right? I mean, mental health in general. So there's not much conversations that we're having on mental health. So we don't know, right? So if I go home and I ask a lay person, they would not know. And in fact, if you as a man would go home and say, I'm feeling very sad to a point that I don't think I have a future. I'm feeling very hopeless. I feel like I can't do anything, and I just want to stay here and not do anything, right? People are likely to say you are a sissy, right? People are likely to say, don't be a baby, right? Like, what's wrong with you, right? We all get sad, but it's not a disease, right? Man up, right? But I think also mental health, because you don't always exhibit physical symptoms. It's not like breaking an arm. It's internal, so it's easy for us to miss it. It's easy for us to mislabel it. It's easy for us to stigmatize. And I think with culture, with systems of patriarchy, with toxic masculinities, it makes it worse for men to speak. Because if you also look at the treatment of mental illnesses, there's a lot of therapy. and that requires talking. So maybe even the treatments that are put in place for mental illnesses will not necessarily work for men who are not likely to speak. So it's a combination of things, right? And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, maybe.
So it's interesting that something that I've really observed in the media and also Elokshini, where I come from, I see that a lot of people who commit suicide are people who have things going for them as a family or usesgela. And we find with us they don't working. We have, some bayazama, but some have actually given up on in life, but they are sitting, and not to say they should be, but I'm just saying I'm finding it with Amajans who have something going on for them, who end up committing suicide or fall into depression. Why would that be happening? Or yeah,
that's a very interesting one. So I'm not really familiar with what happens. Like, why would a person, a kasi, not exhibit, or come up and have depression while someone else might? But we can assume that there's so much. One, depression is not something that you can see. So I think a lot of us may have been depressed once or twice in our lifetimes. You may not have necessarily been able to label it rightly, right? You may not be able to say, oh, this is depression, right? Because we don't know what it is. We don't talk about it enough. But there's been a lot of cases with celebrities, with public figures, and we've been seeing exactly what you're saying, that people who you thought had it, and I think that just shows us that this is a silent killer, and that's what depression really is that I can look all well collected, that you've got everything going for yourselves, but I think also today there's so much pressure. There's some pressure that's imposed on people who've made it. So the minute I leave Ekase and I go to the burbs, there's an assumption that you are doing well. There's pressure that you should have a car, you should have a house, you should have this and that and that, and we know how life is. Things don't always go our way. And is it easy for me to go back and say, actually things are not as rosy as they seem? I'm not coping. I'm not doing well. And the pressure is not just on men, on women, like on everyone. If you go to the cities, there's an expectation that by this time you're supposed to have this. And I think we have a very interesting. These are very interesting times in South Africa that we're talking about this. Thank God for social media and every other thing. But also, I've just forgotten what I was going to say.
Thank God for social media and that we're talking about this thing. And thank God for YDS. We have you here and we're talking about this thing. So I know now in your response you touched on how it's so difficult to even... I was talking to one friend of mine said, we are so flawed in such a way that we only realize later when something has happened, like something tragic has happened. Oh my goodness, lo muntu. You start picking up on the way this person was communicating with you. But as a specialist, are there any telltale signs that, okay, this is alarming? This person could be prone to depression or
sure.
Yeah.
So you're right. I've had a family member who committed suicide, and you can't help but go back and wonder, what could I have done, right? And it's very difficult, and I think that's what I was going to say when I lost my words. It's very difficult in that the society is very individualized, in that I can go on forever without seeing anyone, like without having visitors. I live in a complex where you have to tell the security that you want to come, and I can easily shut that, right? I can easily switch off my phone and not be accessible to the world. So sometimes it's not that easy to reach out, right? But should you have access to a person, if it's your brother, if it's a friend, if it's someone that you see at work, one of the most important symptoms or triggers would be a marked so a person does not enjoy the things they used to enjoy, right? Because I could be able to go to work and deliver lectures and write papers and do whatever is expected of me. But if I had pleasure in going to picnics, in going to concerts and doing all those things that are fun, then if you start seeing that, then you may start wondering. But it's so difficult, and there's so much pressure on us to care for our loved ones, right? So not only are we dealing with a person who's struggling with depression, but there's also people who feel paralyzed, that I do not know what to do, I don't know how to reach out, I don't know how to help this person. So it's not very easy. But a person would express sadness, and maybe you could even see it. A person would say they're struggling to sleep at night, or they would sleep because there's hypersomnia, there's insomnia. So there's a person who cannot, who will go for hours in bed, and there's a person who's going to struggle and not be able to sleep. There's a person who's going to eat excessively. So those are the small things that you can look at. But a person may also express that I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I don't know where I'm going, I feel very lost. So maybe those are the few things that you could pick up from your brothers.
So just to, jumping in and out, depression, suicide, I saw this video of this guy who survived suicide. He actually tried to kill himself, and he survived. And one thing that's interesting that he said, so he jumped over a bridge and headed into water, and he said, of course he planned it. He says, I'm going to kill myself today, whatever. But he said, as the moment he leapt over the bridge, he regretted the decision. Wow. And I'm wondering if you've maybe spoken to any survivors and someone who tried to kill themselves, and how were their responses? What was an interesting thing that they said about their experience?
Unfortunately, I have not. So I can't think of anyone. I just know of cases of people who have successfully committed suicide, if that's even
a thing to say.
Right?
Yeah. I think just going back to Amajita again, you touched on how toxic masculinity and patriarchy are sort of like contributing factors to this. Because as Amajita, we have this thing, we have to uphold a strong image, and I know in the previous episode we touched briefly on this. How would you sort of like address that? How toxic can it get?
Yeah. So it's very interesting in that today a lot of women are educated. If you go to universities and try to get numbers, there's a lot of women who are coming into universities, and getting their degrees. There are a lot of women getting into jobs and having successful professions. So a lot of women are holding their families sort of as single mothers, as breadwinners in their families. So it's twisted in that the system of patriarchy assumes the role to provide on men, while women would be caretakers. But what we're seeing is that the climate is changing, and no one gave the guys the memo. No one said, now that you can no longer provide in this manner, this is how, and it's so sad in that no one really defines what provision is, outside of giving a person money. So what happens if my brother loses their job? What happens when my father earns less than my mother? I come from a home where my father growing up had, as we grew up, so our father earned less than our mother, and he would speak about that a lot. So he would go to church and tell the men about how being a man does not mean being this and that and that and that, right? So being a man is not about earning more, it's not about having money. And there was a lot of resistance, right? And you could see a lot of resistance because people could not understand. And I think that's what's happening. The way that we're socialized, the way that you are taught this is what being a man is, this is what being a boy is, this is what being a girl is twisted, and it's no longer working. So I think we have to go back, and I have, the minute you speak about boys and girls and and teaching them differently, I have so much hope in that. I think there's a lot of room for us to change the story, right? To change the narrative, to control it somehow, and maybe that will lead to healthier lives, right? To a healthier boy as far as their mental space is. So if we teach boys that it's not, you're not weak when you cry, right? You are human. Otherwise, why do you have the capacity to cry if you're not allowed to cry, right? If you teach girls that you can be whatever you want to be, then, because also people now speak about toxic masculinities and toxic femininity, in that now women are so aggressive and men are so, right? So I think if we go back, to the boy child, to the girl child, and change the narrative there, then maybe we'd be able to heal.
Yeah, I mean, like, in the times that we live in, women, and you said this, Buddha, in the previous season, women are rightfully coming into their place, and that is really has left Amajita sort of like frustrated in what's my role now, the pressure that comes with not knowing where do I fit in this thing. Engati, I didn't even get a memo as things change. Can you elaborate a little further on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, we speak about culture, right? And that's this culture of patriarchy. We speak about these gender norms that are imposed on us, as if we are not society. Right? It's easy for us to say, oh, society imposes this on me, so I have to do this and I have to do that. And it's just, for me, maybe it's a way of avoiding to solve things, right? We speak of culture as if it's something that cannot be changed. We speak of culture as if it makes us, and yet we make culture. And at any time, we should be able to say, we are going to change things around. So I think, and a lot of that needs to happen at a very micro level, at the home, like in our homes. So I have a brother and a sister, like 12 and 6 or 8, I think.
Oh my
I know,
Someone's
I'm gonna be in so much trouble.
Yeah.
So Ulunje, my brother, is a softie, right? So he loves plays, he loves music, he loves chess more than rugby and all these things, and he expresses emotion. So he tells you that I love you, I miss you, he calls. And my sister is, he's like, yabo. Like, she does not take nonsense. Even when they play, you see that coming out. You see how she's this strong girl. And a while ago, we would have people coming to our home and be like, no, I say, you're not supposed to do that. And if I'm sitting and I'm listening to that, I'm supposed to control that right there and then. That, no, I say, it's okay, you can do that. Yes, Lunje, it's okay. Express emotion. Because that's where children learn. They learn it from how we speak about gender, how we speak about boys do this, girls do that. So if you don't, and that we have an opportunity to do that. So with our siblings, with our families, and it's like anything, like with any form of prejudice, when we speak about racism and how, and I'm diverting, and how white people can get involved, we don't want you to go to the streets and march. We want you at the dinner table to set the record straight. So we need to do the same thing in our homes. Even in our relationships, my partner is supposed to know that it's not a form of weakness, and I want to raise boys who don't take the bill if they don't have money. I want to raise boys.
Sorry. What did you? Hello. Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is not an invitation, just by the way. Maseti, we still maintain that.
Yeah.
So we need to get to that point, that who takes the bill? The one who has the money. And it can be anyone. Like today it's me, tomorrow it's you, and it's okay. But men have to lose that male privilege, right? Because patriarchy comes with a lot of privilege. Like there's this superiority that, oh, you the man. So you need to be able to let go of that. Otherwise, it becomes one-sided. Otherwise, you come to my house and I take care of you, and that's all. But you're still the man. You still make the decisions, and I still take your name, and and all those things. And I don't want us to divert.
What you gonna say? I know that resonates with you.
So, you touched about changing culture. If we need to change it, we'll have to change it so that it suits both male and female, right? So how do we then modify culture to alleviate the pressure from men so that we can be better men towards our kids and our women?
Okay, so again, culture is not static, right?
Yes.
It should be fluid, and culture is not imposed on everyone. Like we don't have this universal culture as a people. We don't have to. So I can have a culture in my home, and maybe that's easier to control. So I think as a people, like all of us, maybe we need to redefine what manhood is, right? Outside of the barriers imposed by patriarchy, outside of the gender norms, right?
Yes.
So you should be able to speak to your son about what it means to be a man without relying on patriarchy, because we realize how patriarchy is harmful, and we realize how even treating mental health issues is patriarchy becomes this barrier, right? So if we go back and we say, as a boy child, you should be able to express your emotions, you should be able to cry, and that boys and girls will hurt equally. Like if I punch you now, you're gonna hurt, right? And maybe we will start also shedding light on issues that affect boys. So when we speak about rape, we speak about children being molested. It's not a thing that happens on girls only. We'll be able then to also go and tackle those issues and speak about those issues when we speak to boys as well. So whatever does not work, we need to get rid of it. Whatever is harmful, we need to get rid of it. And we can always work with whatever works. And if we are going to modify culture, we need to bring both parties to the table. So it should not be a conversation that men are having in silos. It should be a conversation that we are all having. What works for me? Because another thing is, I may stand here and say, I don't like men who are emotional as a partner. I wouldn't want a partner that's very emotional. But my sister may want exactly that, right? So again, this thing of universalizing issues as if this is what manhood is, clar, right? And this is what a man should be like. And it just imposes this pressure that what happens if you are dating a person who prefers a man that looks like this, and then you end up dating another person who prefers. So what happens to you as a man? Are you constantly changing who you are to fit into a stereotype, right?
Yeah, sure. That's so loaded, eh? Yeah. All I'm taking from this, that we need to start opening up more.
Yeah.
As much as you know. I remember you said something. Yeah, I was reading something that you posted recently. That
we're trolling you guys.
Yeah, you need to.
Okay.
Number one, know your feelings. Learn to talk about your feelings, and learn ways of regulating your feelings on your own. You know. Yeah, just go home, think about that as umjita, and wow, man, thank you for coming through, Thando.
Thank you for
I'm just
me.
reflecting now.
Yeah, thank you for schooling us. It's important, chance to really open up and speak. I think it's something that you guys like to do as Amachans. We try to solve it ourselves. And let's have this conversation.
And let's hope the numbers drop, man.
Let's have this conversation.
Let's really hope those numbers really drop, guys. 450 is a lot. Yeah, Thando, thank you for coming through. And if people are interested in following you on social media and so forth.
Okay, so I'm on Instagram as Thandokazi Maseti, I think. I'm on Twitter as @NoBonFree. I am on Facebook as Thandokazi Maseti. Yeah.
All the best for your endeavors,
Thank you
Miss
so
PhD.
much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doctor. Yeah, and for us, where can people catch us?
You'll see the thing will come.
You don't say on Twitter, you don't say on Instagram, you don't say on Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel. We out. Cheers.